I'm not shocked. I'm never shocked. Whenever Candace Owens writes something on her Twitter and it's just the worst thing you can imagine, I'm not shocked because this is not the first time. She has called the protestors at the BLM protests trained chimpanzees. She has called Black people inherently more violent than other races. She said Hitler had the right idea. And she even said Indigenous people were cannibals, even though there's no proof whatsoever that Indigenous people were cannibals back in the day, and even today. This is the person I'm going to be talking about today, Candace Owens. There are plenty of people that might say that she's a grifter. There's people that are saying that that she may actually believe in what she's espousing. And here are my thoughts. I definitely think she's a grifter. There's plenty of evidence to prove that it doesn't matter what is being said as long as she's getting money off it. She happened to, yes, being a Black conservative is her whole brand. She is in charge of like the whole Blexit movement, which turns out she actually stole that name from another organization. And that organization had a completely opposite way of thinking. Even Kanye West said she admittedly stole one of his ideas, claimed that it was her that came up with it. And later when she was like, oh, that's not true, I didn't say that, he's lying. Footage came out of her admitting this. She actually said in front of a bunch of people, I designed this, on at least 2 occasions. So she's known to be just the most horrible person you can think of. Maybe I live in a box, but I've never met a single Black American who was a slave or a single white American who was a slave owner. I've only come across lazy people who believe that those of us who work ought to support them. Human parasites, and they come in every race. First of all, we all know that happened many, many years ago. So it's not going to be a shock that she has never met a Black American who was a slave or a white American who was a slave owner. But just because she hasn't met them, what is she trying to get at? She hasn't met them, therefore it's untrue? No, there's plenty of evidence to prove that this was in fact something that happened in the past, and obviously she must be aware of that. There's plenty of footage to prove as such, but I don't know what she's getting at here. Obviously, this is what people like her does. This is what people like Jordan Peterson do. They say something so vague that when someone comes across and maybe quote tweets this and say, are you mentioning that just because you've never met someone who was a slave owner, that means slavery didn't exist in the past? And then she would turn around and be like, when did I ever say that? This is something they have learned to do. And it's so easy to get away from any type of backlash by creating a tweet that is so vague. So that's the first thing. It's ridiculous, the fact that she even mentioned this. But after, the paragraph states, I've only come across lazy people who believe that those of us who work ought to support them. Now, I'm curious, has she ever came across someone who was unemployed? Ever? Of course, there's many people that know people who have been in and out of work, who are probably on welfare. It happens. But her interpretation of this is they're lazy. And this is something most conservatives tend to have an opinion on. They think that people are just lazy, and that's the only reason why they're mooching off welfare. And of course, there's people that may be doing so, but there's a small percentage of people. And in reality, a lot of people would love to work. Now, of course, they're hearing people along the lines of like, well, I don't like working. I hate getting up in the morning and going to work. Yeah, you know why? Because their work sucks. This is what happens. If you really don't like your work, you're going to be getting up in the morning and going, oh, dreading the fact that you have to go into work. But people on average love to work when it's something that they love. Now, for example, I've had many jobs in the past that I was just tired of getting up in the morning. I even got anxiety. I was prone to anxiety just by getting up and going to that work. And why? like I've mentioned many times before, it was because of like harassment that was going on in the work, the type of work I was doing. It was probably taking a toll on my body. This is the stuff that makes one not feel comfortable going to work. But look at the type of job I have now. I'm currently off work. I'm going to be back in a few weeks. It's like, I'm getting tired of it. I want to work. And most people do. When it's something they actually have motivation to do, that they really enjoy what they're doing, they want to do the job and they want to get paid for it. So this whole concept of people just being lazy, and that's why I ask, has she ever came across anyone who was not working because they just simply did not want to work and it's just so much easier to get on welfare? And I'm not saying those people don't exist, but as I mentioned here, everyone has a different story. But in her mind, they're human parasites. I, for one, work with the homeless. I work with them. And I know many other people that work with them. And then you wonder why we have a totally different comprehension of what's going on in comparison to someone like Candace Owens, who makes tons of money by stating things like this online. And this is what I mentioned about like how a lot of people are just so disconnected that they have no idea what people are going through in their lives. There's plenty of reasons. And this is a whole other thing where people talk about addiction. Addiction can definitely affect your work environment. There's people that may not be able to work because of their addiction. And I hate it. I absolutely despise it when someone comes forward and says, well, that's their fault. Why can't they just like get up and like change their life? Because everything they're stating, while it's possible to do, they're making it seem as though this person is lazy for not getting there. So this whole thing about maybe I live in a box, she does live in a box. She lives in a privileged box, and I don't understand why people are so offended by the concept of someone being privileged, by having someone tell them that they're being privileged. Of course you're being privileged. If you really think that people should just pull themselves up from their bootstraps and they'll be as successful as you, have enough money as you do, because all they have to do is just get off their ass and do something about it. There's so many layers that they just do not comprehend. And the reason why they're saying stuff like this is because I don't really truly believe, and maybe I'm wrong, that someone like Candace Owens was even in that predicament in the first place. I mean, it's so simple for her. Look at it. She's creating content that caters to a specific audience that is willing to just throw money at her. And this is how she's getting paid. But there's people that have integrity. There's people that have they have principles. They're not going to do something like this. So there's people that unfortunately have to work at low income jobs just to get by. But I think in her mind, she's like, well, I'm doing this, so it's so easy to get money. Well, we're just not disgusting people like you. And it's funny, they're all very hypocritical, because look at people like Miley Yiannopoulos. Oh, he was complaining about other people being poor. Well, just stop being poor, guys. Well, then he started complaining about the fact that he lost everything and he had no money. He was in extreme debt, and he only had 2,000 followers on one particular social media outlet, and not a single one of them was able to help pay him for anything. So the guy that's saying, oh, stop being poor, was now in a predicament where he had no money whatsoever and he had no support whatsoever. So definitely, she's living in a box. She's living in her privileged box. She has no clue what's happening in the outside world. And people like me do, because I'm the type of people that are out there talking to homeless people. I'm actually engaging in the community. I see what's going on. I see how difficult it is for people to get by. So, okay, what is Candace Owens truly doing for the better of society? She will step on other people's necks just to get by. It's just all about money to her. And I can't imagine living that type of lifestyle. Man, boy, would I love that kind of money, though, but I wouldn't sell my soul for it. Just be like a normal person and start out an OnlyFans or something.